Welcome, everyone. We're just going to open the room and give it a few minutes for everybody to come in. Again, welcome, everyone. We are just waiting until the top of the hour before we begin our webinar. We're going to begin in about 1 minute. So it is the top of the hour and we are going to begin. I'd like to welcome everyone to our School Mental Health Summit, Emerging Stronger and More Resilient, Learning from the COVID-19 Crisis. This is a 2-day virtual conference. The 2021 Northeast and Caribbean MHTTC School Mental Health Summit brings together leaders, practitioners, and researchers and all other stakeholders in the school mental health field to share the latest research and best practices. The conference emphasizes a shared school family community agenda to bring high quality and evidence-based mental health promotion, prevention, and intervention to students and families as part of a multi-tiered system of supports. This conference is sponsored by the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, housed at Rutgers School of Health Professions, Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name is PJ Wanger, and I am the Senior Training and Consultation Specialist of this center, and I will be hosting this conference session today along with our presenters. This is session 1, Youth and You, Mental Health Through the Eyes of Teens. This is day 1, session 1. In the next 2 slides, you will see the listings and times for today's conference sessions. The full schedule and individual Zoom links can be found on our conference website, www.mhttc School Mental Health Mental Summit at .rutgers.edu. We will put that in the chat box so everybody has access to that. So today's sessions that you can see, and there is our website at the bottom. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of the behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirically supported practices to individuals with mental illnesses. We have also been awarded additional supplemental funding focused on enhancing student mental health in schools. Please visit the MHTTC Network website for additional information at mhttcnetwork.org. Funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, the MHTTC network includes 10 regional centers, a National American Indian and Alaska Native Center, a National Hispanic and Latino Center, and a network coordinating office. Our center is Region 2, serving New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Supplemental funding was awarded to provide training and TA to teachers and school staff regarding student mental health. The objectives of these activities is to communicate the importance of mental health supports in schools, enhance the capacity to recognize and identify mental health concerns in students, and to educate staff on the best models of school-based mental health services and when to link to community-based services. We have the capacity and expertise to provide national webinars, general trainings, professional development meetings, and intensive technical assistance and consultation services on school mental health topics that are listed on this slide. If you are interested in staying up to date with the events and products the Northeast and Caribbean MHTTC is providing, please sign up to receive our email communications. You can sign up at the bit.ly link provided on the screen and will be shared in the chat box. Following the webinar, you will be asked to complete a brief survey. We value this feedback and use it to improve our activities and inform future activities. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys. So we thank you in advance for your feedback. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our conference website along with the PowerPoint slides within a week of the conclusion of this conference. This presentation was prepared for the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. All material appearing in this presentation, except that taken directly from copyrighted sources, is in the public domain and may be reproduced or copied without permission from SAMHSA or the authors. Citation of the source is appreciated. Do not reproduce or distribute this presentation for a fee without specific written authorization from the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. This presentation will be recorded and posted on our website. At the time of this presentation, Miriam Delphin-Retman serves as the Assistant Secretary for SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be inferred. We encourage you to interact with our presenters during the webinar by using the chat feature. Please post any comments or questions you have in the chat, and I will collect your questions as we go and ask them of the presenters during the Q&A time toward the end of the presentation. During the webinar, our presenter may pose questions to you. Please use the chat feature to answer these questions. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. This includes language that is strength-based and hopeful, language that is inclusive and accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, language that is healing-centered and trauma-responsive, language that invites individuals to participate in their own recovery journey, language that is person-first and free of labels, language that is non-judgmental and avoids assumptions, language that is respectful, clear, and understandable, and consistent with our actions, policies, and procedures. Now let's begin. We have with us Jasmine Longomas, Sabi Hassan, and Sid Vetcham with us today. Jasmine is a rising senior at Carteret High School who strives to eliminate the stigma around mental health. Her career goal is to become a talent agent as she loves utilizing her business skills and desire to help others achieve greatness. During her free time, Jasmine loves to advocate against toxic masculinity with her involvement in A Call to Men and against destructive decisions with her position in the SAD Student Leadership Council. Jasmine is a recent graduate from the New Jersey Governor's School in the Sciences Summer Program and a winner of the 2021 National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism Video Challenge. Sabi Hassan is a rising senior at Carteret High School. He is looking forward to a strong career in the medical field. In his free time, Sabi promotes the necessity of mental health resources to youth in his position as an Empower Somerset Youth Advisory Board member. Sabi also loves to be a part of his school's performing arts and choir leadership council, where he holds 3 leadership roles. He was the winner of the Respecting the Roundabout SAD and National Road Safety Foundation nationwide contest and is currently awaiting the President's Volunteer Service Award. Sid Vetcham, who goes by Sid, is a rising senior from Montgomery High School. Sid has been an active member of Somerset's Youth Advisory Board and also fundraises for groups combating the opioid crisis. He also founded Pill Cura, a company that produces a regulated pill dispenser aimed at preventing drug misuse and abuse. Sid's personal goal is to work more with his local community on issues such as racial inequality, mental health, and the opioid crisis. Now I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, and I'm going to let Jasmine share her screen.
So good morning, all. Sabi and I are so glad you can join us today for some youth insight on mental health. With school going back into session, we want to make sure you are all prepared and able to provide adequate assistance and care for students and other staff who might be struggling with mental health. Without further ado, let's begin. To begin, Sabi and I are going to go over some common stressors we or our peers have faced while in a school setting.
Good morning, everyone. The transitional period between middle school and going to high school is a pretty big deal. I know that I was extremely nervous and anxious the night before the big day that school opened. Youth are bombarded while heading into a new school and have no idea what to expect. New classes, seeing upperclassmen, trying to figure out the combination to your locker on the first floor before your next class is in 2 minutes on the third floor, and why the French teacher isn't speaking English at all is a lot to handle. It's crucial that teachers and staff help these students find their classes, integrate into a new setting, and answer all of their questions. High school is a time for youth to mature and find themselves. Relationships are a large part of the high school experience, and it's important to keep them healthy. I've always heard that you lose some friends in high school, and I thought that it was a myth or that it simply wouldn't happen to me. But I was wrong. When a person who I considered to be one of my best friends at the time suddenly stopped talking to me and was acting strange, my mind started to wander. Was I the problem? What did I do wrong? Why is this person no longer talking to me? This went on for a while until I concluded that nothing was my fault, and if it was going to happen, nothing could stop it. Post losing this friend, I had time to reflect on our friendship and realized that it had been a toxic relationship. It wasn't a healthy friendship, and my other friends helped me figure this out. I was deeply hurt, but I was fortunate enough to have a support system of friends alongside counselors and teachers. All of this combined can be a tremendous load of stress for students. The first weeks at a new school are the most troublesome, so during this time, it would be great for staff to do their best to help students integrate. Some ways I see this being possible is in form of a tour of the school, where teachers can show the new students where each subject wing is and how the classroom numbers work. Another idea is having teachers stop students before exiting the classroom door and pointing them in direction of their next class. If I had been given this opportunity when I first started high school, I would have been considerably happy because finding classes was one of the hardest things to do.
During my time in middle school, I struggled with fitting in and making friends. I always felt excluded from conversations, and my interactions with other people solely consisted of whether or not I did the homework. I tried my best to simulate by buying the right and cool sneakers or acting likable, but it felt like nothing worked. The majority of the time, I was met with hurtful words like, "Why are you wearing those fake Jordans?" or "Those are so ugly." If I were told those words today, I wouldn't care and I'd brush them off. However, my self-esteem wasn't as strong 5 years ago. Hence, I relied on my journal to write down my emotions and the struggles I would face on a daily basis. Looking back at early pages in my journal, I see words like "nobody likes me" or "would they even care if I disappeared?" I didn't even consider that I might have been struggling with mental health. During my middle school years, I felt like there wasn't enough resources available or anyone to tell me that I was struggling. I wish I had known what my school offered and that I knew I had poor mental health. The lack of accessibility and support system defined my first 2 years of middle school.
So going off of what Jasmine said, I have never struggled with my mental health on such a severe level, but we both have a close mutual friend who continuously battles with their mental health issues. For privacy reasons, we will not be naming this person today, but from now on, they will be referred to as M. Jasmine and I both consider M to be one of our best friends, so seeing her struggle with agonizing mental health issues was painful. We wanted to do our best to help, and all was going well until the COVID-19 pandemic had swept the nation. Being unable to see friends and the widely caring and appreciative support circle cracked the foundation of M's reconstructed mental health that we all collectively worked so hard to build back up. As time went on and things were starting to look like they would never end, our friend was at her lowest. She told us everything about how her abusive home life was ruining her and that she wouldn't be able to survive much longer. No one was there for her. Our text messages and FaceTime calls could only help so much. Jasmine and I knew it was time for change, or else we would lose our friend forever. Whenever she needed help, she knew she could rely on us, and we would give her our best advice. We encouraged her to speak up and inform her teachers on why she was slacking on handing in assignments, as well as why her attendance was plummeting. Not too long after, we were able to help her find a home that would take her in so she could escape the dreadful life she was living. And fortunately, as of today, she is safe and happy. I wanted to tell you the story today because we saw firsthand how devastating mental health issues can be for someone you love. Going to school-based youth mental health services during school was simple and convenient, but when this opportunity was stripped away, youth had nothing they could truly rely on. I wish that these safe spaces were being preached as much virtually as they were in school, but unfortunately, I didn't see too much of it. It would have been so incredibly beneficial if teachers were asking students one-on-one why they weren't logging onto Zoom daily, or why their work was being turned in late, instead of assuming that the student was lazy and did not care for themselves or their grades. The same can be said for in-person students as well.
After hearing that moving story about adversity a teen might face, it's important to note that educators don't know what's going on in a teen's household unless they are notified. That being said, let's take a look at some emotions a student might experience if they have failed a test. Failing a test that is 45% of your grade is the worst nightmare for a lot of students, me and my friends especially. When students see a low grade, their first reaction is to panic because it's so easy for a 50 to drop your grade, yet it's almost impossible for 100 to bring it up. Additionally, students begin to worry about what their parents or guardian might say about their score. I come from a family of strict parents, so this is always my concern when I get a grade below a B. Students might feel some relief if their peers got the same answers wrong. However, if they were the only ones with the low grade in the class, this would only cause more stress. Getting a bad grade leads to more negative thinking. Students might start to believe that they're not worthy or think they're a failure over a grade. This negative thinking can add to the negative emotions the students previously felt. If students have someone they can rely on, they'll usually vent about their worries to their friends, siblings, or teachers, who in return provide consolation. However, not everyone has a support system to relieve some of their stress. Ultimately, it's up to the student to come to terms with their low marking. Either their negative feelings remain or they will forgive themselves and move forward. Of course, this is only an example of what might happen, but these are common emotions and feelings I've noticed amongst my friends and within myself.
So moving on, Jasmine and I will now talk about how we prevailed with our struggles against mental health. Of course, these things take time to heal and repair, but it's important to have the mindset that you need help and want to be helped. Becoming closer with your friends, teachers, and even guidance counselors is a huge advantage when it comes to winning this battle. And Jasmine will tell you more about how we did so in the next slide.
So It might be surprising, but Sabi and I weren't always friends as our relationship had a rocky start. However, we are best friends today, and he has provided so much support to me whenever I'm struggling with myself or have an issue. This is just one example of how connections and bonds can strengthen not only one's relationship, but can benefit themselves. In a school setting, having a friendly and compassionate teacher can elevate the classroom setting and make students more willing to talk to their educator. For example, my choir teacher showed me kindness the first day I met him, which inclined me to reach out to him whenever I needed advice about schoolwork or personal issues, because I knew he would always give me a non-judgmental answer. As a result of our connection, he became my favorite teacher, and I show gratitude by always participating and listening during class. The way teachers and other students portray their emotions and attitudes towards students set the precedent of their dynamic for the remainder of the school year.
Similar to the benefits of making bonds with teachers, being able to get close to club advisors during school programs can be the outlet that students need. During the school day, students are constantly worried about keeping their grades up or appealing to their peers, which can be exhausting. Therefore, after-school extracurriculars provide the relief students may need after a long day of school. For instance, Jasmine and I constantly email our club advisor back and forth about contests we won and ways to benefit or advertise our clubs. The conversations would be completely different if we were talking to a student. Overall, being praised by an adult is satisfactory and can be stress relieving at times because our club advisors always offer to help us whenever we need it.
During our most recent year of high school, our junior year, CB and I took the initiative to go beyond our school and join the advisory councils for counties in New Jersey 25 plus miles away. Through our involvement, we were able to become experts on topics such as prescription drug use, underage drinking, nicotine use, and marijuana use. Attending weekly Zoom meetings allowed us to become close friends with the advisors and our peers when experiencing fun seemed impossible during times of unemployment and disease. Our ambitious personalities and out of the box thinking have given us so many great resources and context to reach out to if we ever need them. So much so that we were able to collaborate on a podcast centered on marijuana usage that was posted on Spotify and other podcast networks. My connection with outside activities has fueled my motivation and ambition to be influential and keep striving for change.
As of today, Jasmine and I are part of multiple organizations that battle against mental health issues, tobacco and nicotine abuse, and stigma against gender roles. I know that I wouldn't be the same person that I am today if I weren't a part of all of these organizations, and I believe Jasmine can say the same for herself. The reason we wanted to start being ambassadors and advocates for such things is because we wanted to do something bigger than ourselves and wanted to do our part to change the world, no matter how big or little of an impact.
In our daily lives, Sabi and I always make a conscious effort to try and get rid of the stigma around mental health and encourage those who we can reach to speak up about their emotions. Our work in the Lindsay Meyer Teen Institute and Students Against Destructive Decisions is to promote healthy behaviors and provide support for other youth. In our advisory boards, we lead conversations and town halls and give attendees mental health resources, ways to cope with stress, and other important takeaways. My involvement in A Call to Men really hones in on pushing for men to express emotions and create an environment where men don't feel judged. As our repertoire of organization involvement continues to grow, we hope to spread positivity and create a safe space where people can express their emotions wherever we go.
The next portion of the slideshow will focus on what you as educators can do. We'll go over what you should and shouldn't do, why advocacy is so important for youth, and how to eliminate the stigma around mental health.
So here we have a little clipboard of, you can take a picture if you'd like. And here's some do's that we feel like are really important to keep in mind this school year. And it's showcasing a friendly attitude to students or providing a list of mental health resources, using your authority to instill change, say if your school doesn't have mental health resources for students to access, leading by example, encouraging club and advocacy involvement. Additionally, we have our don'ts. Don't ignore the signs of students suffering, and don't brush off the emotions of students. Other advice is keep your learning space inclusive and really take the time to listen to students. Lastly, we want to talk about a great resource Sabi and I recommend, and it's called the Second Floor Youth Helpline. You may have heard of it before. The school-based youth service at our school always pushes this out to students. I really love it because all the information you disclose is 100% confidential and the number is available 24/7, 365 days a year. Informing students about a resource like this doesn't pressure them into using it or make them think there's something wrong with them. Rather, this number is more so a reminder for students struggling that there is someone always willing to listen to their concerns and worries without being judged.
So this concludes our presentation. Jasmine and I are both very fortunate to have this opportunity and would like to personally thank all of you for your time. We'll both take any of your questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasmine and Sabi. We're now going to move on to Sid's part of the presentation, and just give me a moment to switch the screen. And Sid, you're on.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to me and hearing my thoughts about youth mental health and like what teachers in the school on the whole can do more to help students feel more open to talk about their issues and creating a more inclusive environment. Next slide. So first, a little bit background, like youth mental health has been a pressing problem even before COVID. Like almost 10% of youth face severe depression. And often they don't know what they're facing. They just think it might be a part of puberty, or they could just be struggling, just feeling a little bit down, but they don't know how bad the issue could be. And groups that are marginalized, especially like LGBTQ or like children of color, they're often more vulnerable as they face more societal effects like racism or homophobia, and they often fail to get proper support, especially in the LGBTQ group from their parents, which can even lead to worse spiraling of mental health issues. Isolation and loneliness are among the top 3 causes for those suffering with anxiety or depression these days. And with the COVID pandemic and lockdown, students have become even more isolated and lonely as they've been unable to socialize, interact with friends, and the schools have often been like a place for them, almost been like a constant to keep them and helps them calm them down. And now with the loss of the schools and all that, students are now facing even worse issues, and it's now more important than ever when students return to school that they get the proper environment. Next slide. So schools, one of the first things schools can do is help provide more resources and screening confidentially. Going based off my experience, I'm a student at Montgomery High School, and I'm happy to say that my school is often very supportive of mental health, and they've always tried to make an inclusive environment. But often, this was like based off a personal experience. During my sophomore year last year, unfortunately, one of my classmates passed away, and a lot of kids were completely shocked. And it was like one of the first times we had seen someone who just a few weeks ago was sitting with us at the same lunch table and making a joke with us. Just like it was an idea we couldn't comprehend at the time. And a lot of students were really, including me, were kind of struggling at the time because he was one of my close friends. And our school had the foresight to bring in some counselors and therapists to help us work through the issue. Unfortunately, many of the therapists were often kept in public areas, and many students felt a little bit almost embarrassed, and they felt self-conscious to go and start talking to them. Especially among some of my male friends, this was almost like a manifestation of toxic masculinity. They felt like they need to be strong, they shouldn't show their feelings, and they have this kind of like wrong idea of being masculine, and that's led to a lot of issues with many of them students trying to go through their day normally. And often teachers had to go and encourage students and and this was actually a good thing, encourage students to go and help them go to the therapists or counselors. So one thing schools really do need to value is the need for confidentiality, because many teenagers, they want to conform, and if they see other students who are if they see all their friends are not going to the therapist, they don't feel like going to the therapist. And it's very hard for them to broach the idea, hey, maybe we should go talk to a person. They don't want to do anything that is like peer pressure and conform. As like Jasmine told, as Jasmine and Sabib have talked about, they don't want to go and look different. We want to fit in. And this is really, this confidential way, students are much more willing to go if they don't have to reveal at first to the rest of their friends what they're going through, if they can just get the help they need and move on. And often students feel like there's something wrong with them if they're going through mental health issues. And they feel like mental issues they're not the same as like a physical illness or a physical injury, even though they're almost the same. They often feel like it's not the same, and it's something they should be like try to hide, or they should tough it out. And they don't sometimes recognize how bad the issue is, and it can really spiral out of control. There's a lot of, especially high school is one of the most stressful times in your life. And especially in my community, for example, college is one of the most important stuff. Getting into like a prestigious college, there are like many kids whose parents don't accept anything less than an A, so there's already stress there. And then you have to consider your social life. Sometimes you have to go work an after school job. All this pressure can come in. They feel like it's normal, and they don't know when it's really there. If should they talk about it, who to talk to. So schools have a big role in the student's life, and when they reassure that it's okay if you're feeling an issue and you should come and talk, it's mental health issues are part of life, and it is not something's not wrong with you. It's just something you have, and you can work with us to deal with it. This kind of message, especially if it's reinforced over and over, just as like some, for example, some schools they do like assemblies once every year, but and they go give this message, but half the time during assemblies, so many kids are not paying attention or they're just taking it as a joke. And it's not really, if you tell it once a year and then you just wait another 365 days to come and speak again, it doesn't really always give a lasting impact. And I know at first during my 9th grade and 10th grade, at first, I didn't really treat it seriously at first when it came to mental health. And I just thought, oh, they're just talking. And I spent most of the time during the first assembly in 9th grade just watching YouTube, quite a little bit embarrassed to say. But if I wish there had been a little bit more reinforcement of this issue. And I'm thankful to my time on the youth advisory board that I came to actually know more about this issue. But not every student does get the opportunity like I did. So I believe like schools reinforcing this message can really help in the long run. Additionally, parents have one of the biggest influences, and I know especially among many newly immigrated parents, and especially among the Asian community, which I belong in, many of them are very skeptical about the idea of mental health, and they don't really believe in it, or they just don't have any knowledge. I know from my parents, for example, when they first came to this country, they didn't even know what depression or mental health was. It was just like a foreign concept. And luckily, my parents did get some education from this local school district and online, but not every parent doesn't get this information, and it's very important to target the parents and make sure they know what mental health is, what the symptoms are, and have them talk to their kids. Parents are the ones who have the biggest influence on their kids, and they see them every day compared to a teacher who might see a student for an hour a day. And parents are the ones who can first notice an issue and go start talking about it. As I had mentioned, one of my close friends who unfortunately passed away, he had been struggling with a few mental health issues, but unfortunately, his parents didn't even know much about mental health. And it was a big issue for them. And because they had also, like my parents, they had come from another country and they had never really learned about such issues. They didn't know when he like my friend had started behaving differently and showing some different symptoms only at home. He used to like tough it out at school, put on a mask kind of, and act normally. But once he got to home, he would kind of act out almost, and they just thought, oh, it's puberty, he's growing up, and by the time they could only notice something, it was too late. So had the school educated them a little bit more, it could have really helped them a lot and maybe even helped them in the future. So parents really, if like targeting parents who don't have much knowledge, like holding assemblies, often these parents they're very open to listening to the school. They trust schools. Schools are like a pillars of the community that they'll really listen to. So having schools giving that information can be a big help. And finally, it's very important to focus on students with this who are more prone to the mental health issues, especially the LGBTQ or minority community. And like our GSA club, for example, they hold like a meeting every month for students, the LGBTQ community or the allies. They can come and watch and come to know more about mental health, how to deal with the issues, like dealing with parents who are not fully accepting how, and all that kind of stuff is really goes a long way when you feel someone in your own tribe or community giving something specific to you, you feel more empowered and being more able to talk about it. Next slide. Going more on confidentiality, students often fear social isolation because few kids in my school who have at first mentioned their mental health issues, especially ones that are non-ADHD, like anxiety or depression, kids almost sometimes think these diseases are contagious. We don't want to hang out with them. What will other kids think? And they become social pariahs almost. And that actually reinforces the issue, as social isolation is one of the main causes of mental health issues. For a waiver confidentially, for example, we have this thing called like waivers where you can get some certain, if you have like ADHD, you can get some extra time to do a test because you need a little bit more time. But often these issues, they're told in public. So kids feel embarrassed to get these IEPs to help get what they need. Like sometimes they'll tell, oh, you get 5-10 more minutes on, like one teacher accidentally announced it to this class, and then that kid was really embarrassed. So kids really fear not fitting in. It's very much in our DNA, almost teenagers, for us to go and like get all the trendy clothes or get the get a car when you're 16 or when you learn to drive. So confidentiality will make kids more open. Just having like a private room, like after school, where they can talk to a guidance counselor or a mental health professional can really go a long way, because after school is really where a lot of kids can go, just talk for a few minutes, get what's off their mind, and have a very important thing. Many teens don't have supporting parents or family members, especially they fear reprisal from their parents if they broach the issue with them. So having a confidential way to just talk to the school without getting the parents involved, if they request it, can go at really help, especially at first. Because there often many teams, even if they do have the ability to talk to a teacher, they're worried that the parents will come to know. And if the parents are not very willing to listen, they're worried that you can have some negative repercussions at home. And so confidentiality assuages these fears and make teams more likely to get help and speak what's on their mind. Next slide. And parents is this is probably the most important slide I have to say, is parents really need to be educated. Many parents, even if they know more a lot about mental health, they don't know about its prevalence among youth. For example, if you go and interview probably 25 parents on the street, I guarantee you most of them would not know that 10% of students deal with depression and many students deal with ADHD or anxiety. And I may already spoke about this, but many immigrants do not know anything about mental health on the whole, even when it comes to adult mental health. And it's many kids parents don't believe it can occur among kids. They don't believe a kid can get depressed or anxiety. They only can get depressed if if they're dealing with adult issues. How can a bad grade or college or just a SAT or AP test score cause a problem? But many parents do trust respected people such as schools, doctors. So bringing in doctors or some mental health professionals, just having them speak to parents about the issue can really go a long way in making them understand what's occurring and what they can do. And parents know at the end of the day, know their kids the best. They have seen them since they're pretty much usually born. They spend many hours a day with them, and they can see the first signs, especially. They can know when something's off. If they know the symptoms, they can quickly identify the issue much faster than others. Because teachers do a lot of work. They have to pay attention to usually around 20 kids for an hour and to deal with 3-4 classes a day, at least in my school. So it's sometimes very difficult for them to pick up on the issue as fast as a parent who can do it. Next slide. And going on that, COVID has really made worsened the issues for mental health as socialization is completely reduced and it led to a sense of isolation. I know during the first few months of COVID, I couldn't talk to my friends, like text messaging was all we could do, but often it didn't really have the same feeling. There was no like face-to-face conversations. And sometimes I just felt like I was trapped in like a prison that was my house. And it really makes you gives you like this claustrophobic sense that really can worsen if you have pre-existing mental health issues. I know, luckily, I do not have any, but some of my friends, they really had to went through some struggles, and luckily they had supportive parents who really helped them find new ways to get past the issues. But many kids do not have those parents that can help them because they don't know what's going on. So educating them really is a big important, especially during COVID. And often kids are much more engaged with the news these days. And whenever during this, anxiety really increased among all students, even if they hadn't dealt with mental health issues before, because every day there seemed to be a new lockdown, some new variant. When's the vaccine coming out during the first few months, or vaccine side effects? And with this constant onslaught of news and combined with like the social unrest that occurred last year with racial inequality and the murder of George Floyd, it seemed like everything kind of pulled together and really dragged a lot of students down. So COVID combined with all the social issues that occurred last year, it really made increased anxiety. So when students come back, schools really do need to understand that students are going to be much more anxious than they were coming to. And a lot of students are going to be anxious when they're returning to in-person learning. For many students, it's been more than a year and a half since they've even entered the school or even seen not a person other than their parents. And this is really going to unnerve them, and they're going to be very kind of jumpy, and they're going to need a little bit of a grace period to get into it. So students might not have difficulty at first, paying attention in class or keeping up with all the assignments, or just even going from class to class instead of just jumping from a different Zoom room to another. So schools can really help a lot by assuring them it's okay if you're having difficulty adjusting. It's okay if you need a little bit of some time, if you're missing an assignment or two. And if it's really going to be helpful, teachers are more understanding, and they can give some help to parents about what they can do to help students adjust to the new reality as we're going in with instead of going through Zoom and hybrid classes, we might be going to full in person. Next slide. I would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I really do believe that just coming here shows you're really interested in helping our students get better, and we have a more inclusive and more open environment. And thank you for taking the time to come here.
Sorry, I was muted. So we'd like to enter the Q&A portion of our seminar. And the first question, and you, Jasmine, Sabi, and Sid, you can unmute to answer, is how do your schools support parents on getting educated on mental health?
I can answer this. At times, our school sends resources to our parents, like, oh, make sure to inform your child that our school offers these resources, or just like mailing things home sometimes, but they rarely do that. It's usually just by email. So that's how usually like our parents are notified about mental health resources. But at our school, they mainly like target the youth and just try to get the youth in the school to know what resources are available. And the students in our school are also put like on that same kind of like emailing system. So we get those emails as well, like, oh, make sure you check out like Pathways, for example. Like they have a lot of resources there.
I can also speak about what my school did. For actually only my freshman year, they start introduce this like screening period where parents could volunteer to have their kids screened, and you would answer like a 4-question questionnaire, and then based off your answers, like some parents could be contacted. And then only recently after COVID, our school has really stepped up their game because they realized this can be a bigger issue. So they're doing some more like events almost where they're going to talk to parents about how to recognize symptoms of mental health issues. And they're targeting especially the Asian community in our school district because they noticed that many Asian parents who have Asian descent did not know much about a mental health issue. So they're doing like an Asian-led initiative, or professionals are coming in to target a specific community.
So another question is, you all mentioned confidentiality, and you all talked about how that's so important. So how would you see confidentiality looking in the schools? I know, Sid, you had said like a private space, but how would that look on a daily basis for kids to have some of that confidentiality?
I think maybe a discreet way to notify their guidance counselor, just like being able to have like almost like a box or place they can go to just to go and talk with in private, or just get or arrange for another place to speak. Because a lot of the time, if you want to talk to, at least in my school, if you want to talk to a guidance counselor about mental health issues, the parents are automatically notified. So enough, and whenever like a negative event occurs, you have to do it in public. So just keeping it in private or allowing to do it after school would be really helpful.
Yeah, we also have a club in our school. It's called Pathways. It's a branch of SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions. And basically it's a room in our school, and they'll take in students if they have any issues or if they want to talk about their mental health, and it'll stay between them and the therapists and counselors, like the adults they're talking to. So when that happens, it really just stays between them. It doesn't go to any parents unless it's something really threatening to their lives.
So the next question is a little loaded, so be prepared, you guys. If you had the power to change things to promote better mental health for all youth, what would that change look like?
Honestly, just really getting rid of the stigma, because even though like we're all the efforts we are making now are all to eliminate the stigma, but I feel like there is still going to be just that lingering stigma. So I feel like if I had the power to just like get rid of that and be like, mental health is okay, everyone has it. Mental health doesn't necessarily clarify that you are less worthy or you're struggling or you're not the same as everybody else. Just really making it normal and being like, yeah, like everyone struggles from time to time, and just making it like a normal thing that people face. Like, oh, you wake up late, like that's the same thing as like mental health, but not to the same severity, but you know what I mean? Just getting rid of that stigma and really making it cool.
Okay, one thing I would definitely do is like crack down on kids who are bullying, especially when it comes to mental health issues. Like often, no matter what the school does, if like a student is mocking mental health issues in front of a teacher or just like near an adult and nothing happens, they just go on with their life. It really reinforces the stigma, and students will feel even more like unwilling to bring up the issue, especially if the person mocking the issues is like a popular or like a kid higher up the social hierarchy. So if I had like the power, I would just really crack down and maybe go harsher on issues if it's like dealing with mental health, because that can really send the right message and reinforce we're taking this seriously. And if you're like trying to create a bad environment, we're not going to tolerate that.
Yeah, so going off of what Jasmine said, it's important that students and other youth, of course, know that mental health is important and that it shouldn't be looked at as something that's like bad or taboo, and that it's important to recognize it and do what you can to help yourself and help others who are struggling with mental health. So if I had the power to change something, I would just want to put it in the heads of like all teens that mental health is really important and that you're not alone and it's okay to struggle at times.
Thank you, guys. Another question is, you all talked about how mental health needs to be more of a part of the school system. So how often and on what venue would be helpful for schools to talk about mental health? I know one of you said that there's a once a year assembly, but then 365 days later, there's another assembly. So how often and what venue would you suggest to schools that they have to talk about mental health?
I know my school, sometimes at lunchtime, they set up like tables in the back room, in the back of the cafeteria, and just have like little like interactive games, like maybe like little prizes of like sanitizer or like candies, if students like answer these questions correctly about like mental health or like other destructive decisions. And I feel like small things like that, like maybe not too overwhelming like once a day, because then that'd be like too much and all the information at once, but maybe like once a week or every other week, the mental health service at the school could set up just like a little like lunch table during the lunch periods, however many the school might offer, and just have that set up for students, because not everyone will feel inclined to go. However, it's the people that do go that will be like making the change and be like, hey guys, I just got this candy, like you guys should also do this as well. And I feel like small things like that really like encourage students to talk about mental health.
One thing I would do is I would like prefer if they did in smaller groups, almost like small group therapy sessions similar to that. Because right now, instead of keeping it into like a giant school assembly, or I like if maybe just taking an entire class or half a class and having them speak in small, even if it's only for 10-15 minutes, it could probably be more effective than an hour-long presentation to entire school. I know like this wasn't actually done at my school, but like a summer camp I've been to, it was like there was 200 people, but it was done online. So they used to bring in like there was like small sessions of 15 people each, and it was done for like 20 minutes, and they would do it for the whole other day. They took a break from club like summer camp activities, and it was extremely effective for making all of us feel reassured and motivated.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. So what would you recommend school staff to provide mental health services on the virtual level? I know that you just said small group stuff, but would there be anything else that you guys would recommend?
Yeah, so I kind of talked about this in my presentation. I just briefly mentioned it, but virtually, I didn't see too much of it in my school, which is unfortunate. I believe it would be best if staff can just, tell students that they're there for them. Let them know that, home life is difficult for some and that they're worthy of learning and that what they're feeling is valid, and provide them with resources like the helpline that we offered in our presentation. Doing that would really be beneficial for most students, because it's important to them. It's important to have them know that somebody is there for them and that their teachers do care for them as well.
And adding off what to be said, I would say definitely like maybe weekly check-ins, like on like Fridays, because everyone's like drained out by then, you're ready for the weekend. Instead of doing work, maybe educators can maybe not give a survey, but like during class, or like if they have a Zoom or if it's in person, just like ask students like, hey, like tell us how you're feeling. Or like, I like a good example I like is tell us how you're feeling based on like the weather. So are you feeling like partly cloudy? Are you feeling sunny? Are you feeling rainy? And students don't have to feel pressured to expand on their emotions, but small things like that. And if the teacher like notices like one of the students is like rainy pretty often, then that can be what the educator can do to be like, hey, like what's going on? Like, are you okay? Why are you feeling these emotions? And just really like letting the student know that they're there for them.
So I think that concludes our question and answer. So don't go anywhere, you guys. If anybody has any other questions, you can certainly put them in the Q&A. I want to move on to our evaluation QR code. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA to provide this training free of charge. And as part of receiving this funding, we're required to submit data related to the quality of the event. So at the end of today's training, we'd like you to take a moment to do the brief survey. So you can either hover your phone over the QR code reader, or we will also share the link to the evaluation in the chat box. We also would like your feedback in guiding our educational training and technical assistant efforts by completing our needs assessment. So please scan the QR code on your screen to access the assessment, or the direct link will be put in the chat box. So we understand that information presented can be sensitive in nature. We encourage you to take care of yourself and each other. So on the screen are some of our links to resources that you might find useful. Our teens did identify Second Floor, which I do agree with you guys is a great resource. And again, we'd like to thank our teens. You guys did a fabulous job. And I'm really hoping that all the information that you talked about and the suggestions and the ideas you gave will really sit with our educators who are watching this webinar. So our next session is trauma-informed approaches for school mental health providers. That will begin at 10 o'clock. The direct link to the session will also be shared in the chat box. That session is from 10 to 11:15 Eastern Standard Time. And please connect with us. This is all our information so that you can access any of our resources by email, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We'd like to thank our teens, Sid, Jasmine, and Sabi. You guys did a wonderful job. We appreciate your presentation, and we look forward to all of you who are attending to join us at our next session. So in the chat box, you guys, my teens, you're getting lots of really good positive feedback. So I hope you're all looking at the chat box so you can see what a good job you did and how everybody really enjoyed your presentation. So thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at our next session. Are you guys all breathing?
Yes.
Okay.
That went better than I thought it would go.